Welcome to Crushgasm, the podcast that's been dedicated to bringing you the highs and lows of crushes, but we're shaking things up for the next couple of months to crush on a whole decade. Yep, we're talking all things 90s by breaking it down year by year with some familiar faces. Well, voices, like today's guest, Steve G., the host of Over the Culture and one half of the wonderful team behind Happen in the 90s, who is here to talk about the year that first took us behind the music, 1997. Steve, how are you?
What's up, everybody? I'm your Bachelor of Ceremonies, the one gig kid, Pat Stay Black, Alex Treblack, Reefer Sutherland, Luke Flying Talker, the most interesting blurred in podcasting, the troller of trolls, the Prince of Petty, the macho Mandalorian, Steve G.
Wow. And I'm Kendra. That was
It's
quite
January.
the whoa. So before we get into everything, can you tell people where they could find Over the Culture and Happen in the 90s online?
You can catch both Over the Culture and Happen in the 90s on just about all streams. We got Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anyone's podcast. And then Happen in the 90s, we got that on video. We have that on YouTube, and we have Facebook. The Facebook has been doing numbers, so check out Happen in the 90s Facebook.
And the merch on Redbubble.
And the merch on Redbubble, yeah. We just opened that up in December.
The sweater, I wear Maps all the time and it's so comfortable.
Yeah.
I love it.
Nice fabric. Yeah, it feels good on the skin.
It's a good one. So 1997, that's the year you're going to be talking about. I was in about the 5th grade. I was deep into Spice Girls, crushing on a boy named Kalen. Where were you? What were you up to?
97, man. We are ending our middle school tenure, and we're heading into high school. Me and Matthew, we were, as you know, we were in the same grade, and 97 was a good time. It was a good turning point for wrestling, for both factors, WCW and WWF. We were really heading into the genesis of the Attitude Era. The greatest hip hop album, in my opinion, of all time, dropped that summer. The beginning of that summer, it was Wu-Tang Clan's double album, Wu-Tang Forever. That was awesome. And then just months before that, Notorious B.I.G. drops his posthumous double album, Life After Death, considered by a lot of people be one of the greatest double albums in all of music. This is the Jiggy era, which I'm not fond of. Everybody's shiny and pretty, and that had a short shelf life for me.
The early 90s was still, I always say like 90, 91, still kind of an overflow of the 80s. 92, I feel like we really kickstarted what the 90s was about. And then that until about mid 90s, you had the grunge eras, very like alternative. Yeah, but the end of the 90s, it was shiny, it was sparkly, definitely setting up for what the aughts were going to be about. For sure. But
yeah.
What made that Wu-Tang album like kind of your moment for 1997? Because I was listening to Triumph from that, and for me it kind of just felt like not preachy like you're going to church, but it felt like they delivered just these wonderful stories. Like I just want to hear them tell stories, kind of like that Odyssey, like that long, very Iliad or whatever, like just like that. I don't know.
That's kind of how I look at that album. There was one song that Ghostface Killah, he got verse of the year for that song, and I can't remember the name of it, but it starts off with call the ambulance, JB's been shot, word to Kimmy don't go. I mean, and he's just going off into this whole backstory of how him and Jamie met back in grade school, and now his man's been shot and his mom's there at the hospital, and it's just so. And I remember listening to this at 14, and it was so intense, and like it made me like praise Ghostface. Like that was the beginning of my praise of Ghostface, because I was always a fan of Wu-Tang, but it was like, no, Ghostface, he might be like the best. He might be the best in the group.
Yeah, because they're 9 members?
9 original members, and
They're like the hip hop menudo.
uh
They
I
didn't
mean,
change
I look at him as a hip hop X-Men with RZA as Professor X. You know, he's the one that, like, this is his brainchild. He put all these parts together, and everybody had well representation in there. And like, I believe ODB was locked up at the time of release, if I'm not mistaken, or around this time. But still, they had enough verses and enough like sound bites from him to have him, you know, have a presence on that album.
I like that idea of the hip hop X-Men. You said one of them was Professor X. Do you have any idea what the other 8 would have been? Who they would have been?
I feel like Method Man he's either Gambit or Wolverine, because he was at the forefront. I probably have to say Wolverine, because like he was the one that was put out there early. You know, he was being seen in, like, you know, various pop cultural in movies. He was
like
in,
the
like,
face.
he was the face. He was the Mickey Mouse of the franchise. I would probably say Ghostface is Gambit, because even though he fucks with the crew, he always kind of had his own thing. Like, man, I want to be great. And like, you know, just like Gambit had the cards just popping out of nowhere, like Ghostface has just like jewelry. Like he had like I never forget, he had like an eagle bracelet, like a big ass fucking eagle just popped on top of his wrist. And I was like, dude, that looks uncomfortable. So it's like Gambit has the cards, Ghostface has the crazy ass outlandish fucking jewelry popping out of his wrist. The genius is the Beast, because the genius, or GZA/genius, he actually has like a PhD in like astrophysics or some crazy shit. And the Beast, you know, he was a super intelligent dude too. And GZA, he's a beast with the lyrics. Like his wordplay and how he stacks rhymes. I find that stuff like so profound. Who else we got? ODB. Oh man.
ODB. A wild card.
That's definitely a wild card.
He's like one of those characters. Maybe one in the animated series, but definitely in the comics, maybe.
Nightcrawler, maybe.
Oh, that's a good one.
You got would probably be like Colossus, or I'm trying to think of Wolverine's main nemesis. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Man, who else we got?
I mean, you know the members. Kind of name the ones I already know.
Yeah, I'm kind of dancing around them too, because you know I'm going off of the cartoon from back in the day, and like the first couple movies, the Marvel movies.
Yeah. Well, I think we got a good start. I like Method Man being Wolverine. We got some Gambit, Nightcrawler, Beast. So definitely hit some powerhouse X-Men characters. But I do like them being the hip-hop X-Men. That's a good way to put it. So we're going to keep with the tradition around here. We've been doing this every episode, talking about the people's sexiest man and most beautiful people of the year, because that's what I talk about on this show. Can you take a guess of who those were in 1997? I'll give you a hint. Both men. Because sometimes most beautiful is a woman, so I'll give you a hint.
Oh, they don't even break it down. Like they don't, like it's like the guys and the girls, and
most beautiful encompasses everyone, and then obviously sexiest man.
Oh, this is the prettiest motherfucker of everybody. Damn,
yeah,
I didn't know they were doing it like that. Like damn,
you like,
and it with both guys.
Both guys that obviously sexiest.
Like, damn.
But yeah,
I found somebody prettier than Pamela Lee at the time. Like no, this guy is prettier than her. Like, no, man, I call cap. This man was prettier than Jenny McCarthy. Bullshit. I'm guessing George Clooney was probably one of them.
Ding, ding, ding. He was the sexiest man that year, and the most beautiful person was Tom Cruise.
Wow. Oh, we were still that corny as a country.
Yeah, and for me, up until a few weeks ago, I'd only seen one Tom Cruise movie, and that's The Outsiders. And then I saw Maverick, and that was one too many. I do not like. I think I just don't like Tom Cruise as an actor.
Thank you. He's not that great, people. Like I really feel like, okay, he's the Madonna of acting, of male actors.
Like Madonna.
I like Madonna too, but like to me, she peaked in the '80s. Like she'll
I
never,
feel like,
like in the
yeah, like we did an episode with Jason Hendrickson, and he had his icon crush, which was Janet, and we talked about would you want her to release new music, and it's like no, because she's gonna try to sound like what is now, and she did so well, in her time, and that's what's great. She never has to release anything new, unlike Madonna, who keeps trying to stay relevant. When it's like, girl, you could just play the hits forever.
like you're good. Like man, like it. I'm not going to say her whole career took a downward slope because she did get some praise for playing Evita. I think that came out in 97, 96 or 97. And she got like, I believe she won the Golden Globe. She might have been nominated for the Oscar that year, but she did her thing in another realm. We're talking music.
After
And yeah,
Frozen, it was.
and then like Tom Cruise, like I really feel like we're still living off the hype of Top Gun 1, Risky Business, The Outsiders, like, and him being the pretty boy of the 80s. Like in the 90s, Tom Cruise is kind of douchey to me, and then it just like it got douchier and douchier.
Yeah, it doesn't do it for me. Also, George Clooney is someone who I recognize as attractive, but again, he doesn't do it for me. I mean,
Really?
yeah.
You know what it is? He took the baton from Sean Connery as far as like the white rugged good look man. I might have a role where I'm unshaven. You got the 5 o'clock shadow, and he can rock a good 5 o'clock shadow. And so he kind of took that lane after because Sean Connery, he was still on those lists from what I remember as the older rugged man.
Yeah,
And
he's what our grandmas liked at the time.
that part.
And then George Clooney was our mom's, and I think Gen X was Tom Cruise, and probably somebody, I don't know about, Zac Efron. So there's always a heartthrob.
Yeah, Tom Cruise didn't play the rugged though. He's just pretty. Motherfucker was just like he was nice teeth with the stone jaw.
Well, his teeth, his gap in the front's off to the side, and it's so weird. His 2 front teeth, it's crooked. Once you see it, you can't unsee it in a smile.
Man, it's those L. Ron Hubbard practices that are unspeakable.
Shh, we don't mention that here. They'll get us and make us disappear like that guy's wife.
You're safe though. You're not in Cali.
Yeah. Now I can't go back ever. But
right.
So I think we can't talk about 1997 without mentioning the death of Princess Diana. It was worldwide news. I remember this happened in 5th grade, right about the start of the school year. And this girl in my class was like bawling. And I had no idea who this woman was because when they got married in the 80s, I was probably a baby or not alive yet. So I was like, who is this woman? Why are you crying? Did you know her personally? But what I remember most was like those commemorative plates they put her on. And I thought, in the 90s, like adults love these plates. They had plates for everything. But I think today it's like Funko Pops. And I have some, but I only have the ones like of characters or actors or whatever that I like. There's people that just get them. That they're like the Beanie Babies of today. And Princess Diana definitely had a Beanie Baby. It was the purple bear with the little white flower. Do you think that if she had passed away more recently, that Funko would have like put out this like commemorative Princess Diana Funko Pop?
Oh, like I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't do it now.
Yeah.
if there already is one, because she's that big of a deal. She was that big of a deal. Like, when that happened, like it hit the world. That just wasn't some like regional stuff, because like I feel like the world resonated with her. She was a woman of the people. And I mean, people speculate still to this day, like that's probably what got her clapped.
Like,
she was advised to not be so like otherworldly and like, being serviceable and hospitable, which I think is a regal thing.
Well, they call her the People's Princess for a reason.
Exactly.
And, that girl in my class, she was really upset, but not as upset as Sir Elton John, who went on to release Candle in the Wind, and it was #1 that year. It's a hit song that I'm familiar with, but I don't know all the words. But this kind of became like a symbol at funerals. It was a big funeral song back in the day. Do you have like a favorite go-to sad song in that regard?
In that regard, man, well, depending on who it is, but when my grandma passed, me and my mom, we played the song Mama
Mm.
by Boys to Men, because that is our mama. And yeah, that one really hit. And then a couple years later, when my great grandmother passed, I listened to it. So that's one.
So you never put on the number 3 song of 97, which was Puff Daddy and Company, I'll Be Missing You.
No,
No, that
no,
wasn't a
man.
favorite? Are you
I,
not?
I I wasn't crazy about it. Like, he's a phone it in artist. And that album is a phone it in album. You got this machine behind you, aka the Hitmen. And the Hitmen, they made great tracks. They were samplers, just like that Diana Ross sample that they did on that album. And it served its purpose. Like, Puffy's in this thing to make money. And in like those tracks, they're methodical, I felt.
I was gonna say in this song, obviously it was spawned by the death of Biggie Smalls, and we already talked about Wu-Tang. So you were in Ohio back in the days, and we had this big East Coast versus West Coast, but being in Ohio, did you feel pressure to pick a coast in that battle? Or were you like, I'm in the Midwest?
Yeah, not at all. Like, who has dope music? Because I was a huge Snoop head, but like I said before, I was big into Wu-Tang and Biggie. I like Pac and Biggie. I liked LL Cool J. So it didn't make a difference to me. And as we know now, this was all put together by the media.
Mm-hmm.
Because there were artists like, Method Man and Redman have a song with Tupac on All Eyes on Me. So it depended on if the artist was buying into that or not. And there were artists who weren't. They were like, nah, dude, I still fuck with Cuz over here in Los Angeles. Matter of fact, I got a flight tomorrow to record with him.
So it was all big propaganda, East versus West.
Totally. It was a hype machine.
I get that. And on the total opposite spectrum of the music in 97, we got the story of the singer-songwriter that lived out of her van, and that is Jewel. It's kind of like the thing she's known for. And she really helped push that like Lilith Fair sound, which kicked off that in 97. And I've personally always hoped that this festival would come back around. As the little feminist as I am, do you think we'll ever get that like all-female singer-songwriter kind of thing again? Or is that music kind of dead in the water?
Not for the foreseeable future, saying it's dead in the water. I'm not saying it's like completely gone and it won't have a fan base, but that would be more successful if they were rapping.
That's what I think. I think if they like took it and rebranded it, and you got maybe like a Lizzo, Megan Thee Stallion, kind of opened it up to a more mainstream, they could definitely bring it out. SZA, like
her.
They could definitely bring back a Lilith Fair-esque, but they would have to branch out of the genre. I think Paramore would be good to put on it. Black people love Paramore.
Oh, dude, well, hey, I didn't get that memo.
Oh, yeah. Like, I went to the show in Ohio, and it was the most black people I've ever seen at a Paramore show. And I've seen them in LA a bunch. I was like, my people, hey.
Yeah. I will say SZA's last album, man, she is, this might sound far-fetched, but by the end of her career, she could be on a lot of people's Mount Rushmore. Because she's got her own style, she stays in her own lane. Like her sound is not replicated. She's got her own vibe. As the kids say, it's vibe. I fucks with SZA. Yeah, and I of course I appreciate the Wu-Tang influenced stage name, the SZA. I really thought she was like attached to those guys, but come to find out she's just a fan, and I find that dope.
Yeah, I think I didn't know who she was until they used one of her songs on Insecure, and I immediately was like trying to remember the lyrics. I could Google it, and then I was a fan from that point on. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But
it just takes you to a place.
She's so good, so good. I wish I could have seen her live, but maybe this next tour. But I think also if they wanted to just make a quick buck for a Lilith Fair type thing, they would just get the Spice Girls to reunite and do it. Because like I said earlier, 1997, I was deep into the Spice Girls. My mom, the day I had a 5th grade field trip, the Polaroid came out, and my mom had it waiting for me on my bed. It's one of the old, like, I had a Talk Girl. She made me toss that, but I still have the Polaroid. And I mean, that movie even came out, Spice World.
I remember that.
Oh,
was that
so
the same
good.
year in 97?
Yeah, it dropped here in the US then. And it was just a very silly movie. And for me, it still stands up. And that's what the 90s were about for me. It was about taking risks on these silly movies. And even though I don't like Austin Powers, that was another silly movie that I think was a hit. And again, I hate this movie. It's one of the things in the 90s I don't like. But do you remember being a fan of Austin Powers and like the impact it had?
I wasn't like super crazy about it. I like I like Mike Myers, but I wasn't going around like, saying lines from the movie. Yeah, there were other shit that was popping. I would probably be more apt to like recite like Monday Night Raw lines or some shit. But yeah, Austin Powers, he did his thing, man. But I remember Spice Girls when they came to America, they came full force, and it was a whole movement. And I didn't really care for the music. It was poppy, and I was into like rap and shit. But like, the chicks were hot. I do remember that.
Yeah, and that movie was great. It was cheap in the best sort of way too. Like the budget was probably like $5. We'll be real. But another movie that came out that year that was a little wild. I actually didn't see it until this year, the last couple months, and that was Liar Liar. And no one in the 90s could touch Jim Carrey, but I think the premise of this movie, it was a little crazy for me. Where would you rank Liar Liar, though, among Jim Carrey's like hit movies of the 90s?
It's probably, let me see, of the 90s. It's either 4 or 5, because the main 3 have to be first. MASH, Dumb and Dumber, Ace. I do believe it's better than Ace Ventura 2, so I probably put it 4, and then Ed TV, or no, not Ed TV. It was
Truman Show.
Truman Show. Jesus, it was kind of the same premise as Ed TV, but yeah, Truman Show. Truman Show was probably at 5.
Well, I would say, Truman Show is one of my favorite movies. I love Ace Ventura 2. I think it's better than the first for me, and I don't think The Mask holds up for me. And I can't with the cable guy. That movie just like, I don't know, there's something it makes my skin crawl.
Fuck, I forgot about Cable Guy. How dare I? Liar Liar. Oh damn.
Liar Liar's funny, but the premise of like this poor kid having to use his birthday wish to make his dad not lie. I was like, dang, this is kind of like dark, kind of sad.
Yeah, I remember seeing this in the theater, and like, I don't know, like it's pretty cheesy. Like the whole like, I want my dad to spend more time with me. Like, dude, he has to lie, like, so you could get them nice toys on Christmas. Mm-hmm. That's his job. He's a lawyer.
I know.
Grow up, kid.
Like, lawyers are, for the most part, bad people.
They're not the best.
Because how many politicians have law degrees? Bum, bum.
Man, morals out the window. I think that's a class.
Mm-hmm. I always am like, geez, yeah, I want to know. But then again, I don't think law school's that hard if Rudy Giuliani passed the bar, so...
Man.
So speaking of ranking, we did Jim Carrey's movies a bit, but in 1997 we had some of the biggest and blackest movies come out. We had Booty Call, Baps, Good Burger, Amistad, and Jackie Brown. Where would you like rate those in blackety black?
Amistad is pretty black
It's
for
black
obvious
history.
reasons. Yeah, that's blackety black. I feel like Jackie Brown is blackety black too, because of like they let Samuel Jackson say the N-word around white people, and that's pretty black. And like, I mean, they list that was Samuel Jackson at his most, like, can I say the word on here? I don't know. Like, you say
No.
no, we steer away. All right, I respect it. That was him at his like most inwardness in all of Samuel L. Jackson movies. It's blackety black. Good Burger. I mean, it's Nickelodeon, so that's like medium black. Like there's like a limit. Like, and I love Nickelodeon, gang gang, but like it's Nickelodeon. They got to put a limit on it. But Shaq was in it. Let me see. What were the other ones? Oh, Baps. That's ratchet as hell.
So good.
I mean, yeah, you don't catch Halle Berry in that light too often. And then Booty Call. Yeah, that's black.
Yeah, and Jackie Brown, one of I think a shared favorite movie of ours. So good. I actually never seen it until I started dating Matt, and now it's one of my favorites too. So I allowed him to have the poster in our house.
Man, my dad took me out to see that. I never forget, man. That was cool, and I think that was the first Quentin Tarantino movie I saw in the theater.
And you were about middle school, so that seems okay. I was thinking like you were my age. I was like,
No, by that time this was freshman year, because I believe Jackie Brown came out Christmas of '97. So we were on Christmas break my freshman year, yeah.
So a movie I didn't include, but it was pretty black for the time because it had Will Smith, but that was Men in Black, and it was only outdone at the box office by 2 other movies that year. But like this movie, I still think it pretty much holds up, and that's in part to the song that Will Smith did for it. And I feel like soundtracks, they're just not as appreciated as they once were. Only that song and that one from it's that song from Black Panther that SZA, we talked about her, made. And I don't know, like I don't feel like people are making whole soundtracks. They just might make like the big song. Like I think Adele did one for like a James Bond movie. I think Lady Gaga for Maverick, but not full soundtracks. Do you kind of like miss that about movies?
I do, because that was a part of the package. Like that kind of made you want to give a damn more about the movie. Like, do you know what the greatest, like the highest selling soundtrack of all time is?
I think it's going to be in the next movie we talk about. Titanic.
Nah.
No?
Bodyguard.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And the movie itself wasn't even great, but the soundtrack was so great. I think it like made the movie more important than what it was.
Yeah, I mean, you have Whitney in it. That's why I love the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack as well.
Another one.
Perfection.
Shoot.
But yeah, like Titanic, I thought that was going to be it. It sold a ton, and really Celine Dion was the only one on there with a song with lyrics. The rest was like a musical score, and I remember having that in like 5th grade and being like, okay, the rest of this is stupid, but at least I have this Titanic song. But I understand you've never seen Titanic, right?
Yeah, don't care to. It's kind of like going to Florida. Like I made it this far. Like I cool going the rest of my life, never experience it. Like I kind of know how it's gonna go.
The ending's pretty much written in the cards already for it. Doesn't gonna surprise you with anything new. Like the ship doesn't sink.
Yeah,
would that be a
people
twist?
Are gonna drown, and I'm gonna encounter too many people from Florida.
That's how I felt about Boogie Nights, but Matt, your co-host, my guy, made me watch it. I didn't get why this movie was so beloved by him and his friends like you. What is it about Boogie Nights?
Well, we were adolescents for one, and it's a movie about porno. So it came out at the right time for us young hard-ons, and it's another gateway to titties. It totally was. I mean, of course, it allowed us to see Marky Mark in a different light. Like he did well. He acted well in his role as Dirk Diggler. He was convincing. He played the young, naive startup. And then when he got at the top of the game, he was getting, an ego. And, he started doing some of that booger sugar. Started, just thinking he was King Dangling around the porno streets in LA back in the day. And then who's the guy from Step Brothers? He's hilarious in the movie. John C. Reilly. Yeah, Burt Reynolds, he played a convincing, like, swarmy uh porn director slash producer or whatever. Uh it's some of the lines. Oh my goodness. They're just like timeless. You
Maybe
giving me
it's one
shit,
of
Kurt?
those had to be there type of movies. I was like,
Yeah.
this is not my cup of tea, Matt, but you like what you like. But you mentioned the adolescence part, and I think that is a big reason why South Park did so well when it came out that year. It
Oh my
definitely
God.
helped,
Yeah.
like, I feel like it defined not like our personality and like what we liked about comedy for a generation.
Totally.
Like, and you're not much older than me, so like you said ninth grade at the time. Were you allowed to watch this without any issues?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
totally. Like we the thing was though we didn't have cable when South Park first came out. But yeah, like it was cool. I could watch that and I feel like our demographic really like got behind that.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was fifth grade, and I think it was Starvin' Marvin was the first episode that my family ever had, and we were playing cards. It was on the TV, and my mom, me, and my little brother just were cracking up. We thought it was so funny. It became a show that we watched. It was as family friendly to us as like The Simpsons or like In Living Color. That's like it was
Yeah.
definitely right up our alley. So I loved it from the start. But is there any like South Park character you've related to over the years the most?
Cartman, for sure. Like we all know a Cartman. We knew of a Cartman growing up. And like, you just like there were times when you're like, why am I hanging out with this motherfucker? But like he would be around.
He's just like he's so bad, but he's one of those like have you watched The Boys on Prime?
No, I never got into it.
Okay, so it's like he's kind of like the anti-hero. He's like the Tony Soprano, the Walter White. He's a bad person, but at the same time you love him because he's so good at being bad.
Exactly. And this was the time of the anti-hero. I've said this countless times. Like the late 90s, we're starting to like get behind these kind of people, the Eric Cartmans, the Tony Sopranos, the Stone Cold Steve Austins. It's fun sometimes to do bad things.
Yeah, it's a little rebellious at the end of the decade. I always was. I'm a Kyle fan through and through because he was always the one to question Cartman and be like, guys, this guy's horrible. So I always loved a Kyle.
I mean, their dynamic between each other it's epic.
And shout out to Mr. Hankey's wife, Autumn, who is my favorite side character, that drunken piece of poop. Oh, I love her.
Thank you for bringing that up because Mr. Hankey, that was like in the pantheon of funniest things Steve G's ever seen on television. It's definitely up like that first time I saw that episode of Mr. Hankey. Oh my, I played that back so many times because our rich friend Devin, me and Matt were friends with him. He, of course, had cable, and he would have them taped, those early episodes from the first season. And he would give them to me like, hey, man, check this out. And I just lost my shit.
It's so funny, like not just Santa Claus, not Rudolph. We got Mr. Hankey into the lexicon of classic Christmas characters, and we have South Park to thank for that.
Thank you, Trey. Thank you, Matt.
Yes, two of my beloveds. Like I love them so much. But it's interesting. South Park wasn't the only animated show to premiere that year that millennials kind of latched onto and created whole personalities around. We also got Daria, and Beavis and Butthead ended in '97, but that's where thankfully we got Daria from. But were you convinced back in the day that Daria was voiced by Janine Garofalo?
I totally was.
Yeah. It's like
Totally.
the rumor. Actually,
I mean, it's the.
I was going to say, actually, the woman who went on to voice Daria, we talked about this in a previous episode. She was on the OG season of The Real World that never aired. MTV calls it Real World Season 0. So that's where she came from.
Oh, I did not even know that was a thing.
Mm-hmm. And Daria, she painted this like a picture of high school, and I feel that it pretty much captured what it was like in the 90s, which you went to high school during the latter half of the decade into the early 2000s. What would you say Daria got the most right about high school?
She nailed it. She had all of the different demographics represented on there. She had the jock, she had the flighty blonde, she had her. I mean, and from my high school experience, I was hanging out with the Darias, the cynical Darlene Connors of the high school population. Like I at the beginning, and I will admit, I was a jock. I hung out with those meathead dudes. But for me, it was sophomore year when I had a turning point. It's like, you know what? Like, these people who smoke menthol cigarettes in the restroom are actually cooler than these people I go to practice and hang out with on the weekends. These guys have no fucking personality. So yeah, like, these other people are interesting. The people who skip class from time to time and, skateboard, they're not so bad.
Isn't like, I feel like back then jocks were very going to live in their hometown forever and always go to a Friday night game. That was kind of their personality. Like, they're very into school spirit, hometown spirit. And it's very weird to me because school spirit, one of my top 10 pet peeves. I hate school spirit.
I fucks with that. It was corny. You just, like, it's different for some people. Some people come into high school like that. Like, for me, it was like I was 15 and it just like, this is whack. this is what, like, Friday nights, like, no, this is corny as hell. I just can't. I can't.
So, Daria in South Park at the time, it felt like fresh and new, and alongside Beavis and Butthead, a few other shows like Martin and Roseanne, Married with Children, kind of said goodbye that year. And I think shows like Raising Hope and Malcolm in the Middle definitely filled that like little dysfunctional family hole that was in our hearts. But it's hard to find a show like Martin. Martin was just this like one-of-a-kind gem, and I think UPN definitely helped give us like a lot of great black sitcoms, but for me, none of them quite lived up to Martin. Brel tried. I'll give him his credit. Marlon Wayans came very close with Marlon. It only got 2 seasons, but the dynamic of the characters were very much like Martin and his friends, and the physical comedy was there. But why do you think like Martin is kind of this diamond in the rough, never replicated quite right show?
Everything was organic. It's like, I think, like, it was the first time for some of those people acting. Like the guy who played the Nipsey, the bartender, that was just one of Martin's homeboys. And I mean, he wasn't required to have a lot of lines, but it was just like fresh ideas. Like, one of the funniest skits, or one of the funniest episodes, is when they thought, like, Martin thought someone stole a CD player. And like, there's this scene, it's an infamous scene where he's replicating the New Jack City scene. And Martin asked the set producer, the set designer, whoever's in charge, the prop guy, he asked him for a real dog. But they gave him that stuffed dog. And so, but he just rolled with it. And I feel like that right there, like, that made it even funnier than if it was a real dog, because he's dragging this little dog, it's stuffed, and he's just dropping it. And then, like, there's a part where he runs up in Tommy's face and he lets the dog down and he hops over the dog and he starts barking and he turns around. He's like, no, sit. And the dog's just laying there. And then he runs back to Tom. Like, it's stuff like that made Martin so great. Just like being on your toes and like just making the most out of what you got and improvising, man. The times when they would like almost break character, like the Tommy Davison episode where he's Varnell Jones, this famous like DJ who had the same beginning as Martin, but he went national, and like they're talking at the radio station and like both of them are just struggling to save face, man.
Martin, for me, Martin is up there with funniest shows. Just like I feel like I Love Lucy and her physical comedy. For me, Martin's kind of the only one to come close. Like you said with that dog, one of the funniest things to this day for me is that scene. And when people kind of try to do that on TikTok with the fake dog, I'm like, they obviously got it from Martin because it's always black people. And we know that white people don't really mess with black sitcoms.
Yeah. Like Fresh Prince is an exception to that
That's
rule,
what
I feel.
Yeah, on Masturbators, which I'm part of the I Did Not Make These Rankings podcast network with. So Dre that runs that, he did a sitcom bracket, and we try to pick who's going to be in the top 4 so we could, win. I don't know what we win, but just to see if we're good at estimating. And I picked 3 white sitcoms and then Fresh Prince because I was like, that's the blackest sitcom white people like.
Yeah, it just has that. I think NBC being shown on NBC is probably a big reason. But I don't know. They touched lightly on black things. They didn't. I don't know. They didn't go. They didn't have to go hood.
They kept it. I mean, Uncle Phil, he was a judge and rich, and they were like, okay, passable.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the anti-hero, and in that you mentioned Stone Cold, and I know you're a big wrestling fan, and 1997, a big year for wrestling as we kind of edged into, I feel like, a new era for the WWE, and they had all this other stuff coming out. What's kind of like your favorite moments during that time of wrestling?
I would probably say, let me see, 97. So WrestleMania 13 happened that year, and the main event was Bret Hart versus Stone Cold. And that was the turning point for both of those men, because Bret Hart, he was already kind of talking down on America and whatnot. And then Stone Cold, he was supposed to be a bad guy, but he was already getting support. So at the end of the match, Bret Hart's got Stone Cold in his sharpshooter and his finisher, and Stone Cold's just not giving up. And there's the iconic image of Stone Cold just grimacing in pain, and he's got just this huge gash in the middle of his forehead. But Bret Hart's got him locked in his sharpshooter, but Stone Cold's not giving up. And throughout this whole time, people are starting to chant for Stone Cold, and Bret is starting to look like the bad guy. So that was like a double turn. Bret will become fully heel. Stone Cold is about to be a baby face.
And who, for 90s wrestlers, so nobody from they could be from the 80s and went into the 90s, but in that decade, who would be your Mount Rushmore, the top 4 that really represent 90s wrestling?
It would have to be Hogan, both versions, Hulk and Hollywood, because that was huge. I would have to say Stone Cold, Shawn Michaels, and Bret Hart. Like that's the 4. And I'm a huge Scott Hall fan. R.I.P. He's a big part of the NWO, but like if we're talking the most important from the 90s, that would have to be mine, man.
I mean, that's a respectable. No, I mean, who's that one guy? Ultimate Warrior, the cocaine-riddled man of the world. That guy makes me laugh every time you guys have to review wrestling things, and that guy's a part of it. I'm like, this guy's wild. He's so funny.
Yeah, he was like one of one, and like he had a short reign. Like he was destined for greatness, but like he got it in his own way too much.
That cocaine.
That cocaine, it's a hell of a beast, man. And Vince, he saw something in him. When Vince decides to put the belt around you, like he wants you to be like that dude. And he wanted him to be that guy after Hogan. Hogan was supposed to be like, all right, your era was in the 80s. Your time's come and gone. But because Warrior was such an a-hole, Vince he's like, no, dude, we got to get this guy out of here.
So never mind. Record scratch. So right now we're going to do some popcorn questions. I have 50, so you're just going to give me 5 numbers, 1 through 50, and yeah, they're all 90s. And these are actually the ones I came up with for your show, so maybe they'll be familiar.
Let's go 17.
If you were on so at the end of Titanic, you've probably seen the memes. Rose is floating on a door and Jack's in the water. He wants her to be safe. Would you have tried to get on the floating door too and been like, okay, biatch, you gotta scoot over?
Make some room.
Yeah, like we're in the northern Atlantic. It is cold. Scoot over.
For real, it's cold as hell.
Would you have been like, I love you, but we're gonna take turns? Or just
Yeah, I got left hand, you got right hand. Like,
all right.
Slide to the left, yeah.
Okay, next number.
Let's go 33.
Were you more into Goosebumps or Animorphs?
I would say Goosebumps.
Yeah, I liked the covers of Animorphs, but I wasn't a fan of the books.
Like they had Goosebumps. Like I like the way they laid out the series. Like, I'm big on I don't know, for lack of a better term, copy and paste. And so like Goosebumps, they figured out their format early and they kind of stuck with it, and it worked for me.
Yeah.
It's like, like if you're looking for a Goosebumps, like you could go straight to it. Like you're looking for that look, and like they can be identifiable. Not saying Animorphs didn't, but like, I don't know, Goosebumps just had their own kind of staple.
All right, next number.
21.
Did you ever practice any 90s boy bands dance moves in the mirror?
If any, it might have been New Kids, because I think I was 7 or something when Right Stuff came out. Was that 80s?
They're 80s, early 90s. I wasn't a big New Kids fan, so I don't know their actual, discography or whatever.
Yeah,
but 80s, early 90s.
And their time was around Hammer time, so I was definitely trying to do Hammer moves, and they both had a cartoon out. So yeah, New Kids were popping when I was a little kid.
And your next number?
Let's go 42.
Is life really like a box of chocolate?
They are. If we're talking the assorted variety.
You can say that. Is it usually a good thing, not knowing what life's gonna throw at you?
It can, depending on your outlook, it can be scary, or it can be adventurous.
Yeah, I get that. And I mean, the line comes from one of the best movies of the 90s, so.
Totally.
And your last number?
7.
When you were growing up, was there a teen show that portrayed high school where you were like, oh my God, that's going to be amazing. Like, I can't wait to go to high school.
Oh man, the obvious answer. Come on. I mean, for most people my age, Saved by the Bell. I mean, that's the GOAT of all of this gangster shit. I mean, like, no, come on now. Like, I felt like you could have answered that for me. As long as you've been around our show, yeah, come on. Like, I could not wait. That show had me ripe for high school. And yeah, like everybody wanted to be Zach or Slater or a combination of both. Nobody wanted to be Screech. Everybody wanted a Kelly in their life. But
and everyone wanted a place to go at lunch.
Man, a hangout, you know what I'm saying? You always want to outsmart the teachers, outsmart the principal, skip school, catch the Dodger game, come up with different contraptions on ways to sneak into the girls' locker room, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, Saved by the Bell, it painted a very cheesy picture, but also kind of this like silly, wacky picture of what high school could be. Also, 90210 served your like, wow, it's going to be drama.
And it was stupid drama.
I don't know. My high school was kind of pretty boring, if I have to be honest. It's kind of like towards the end, it was definitely very Mean Girls. So before we wrap up, if you were the age you are now, but in 1997, what do you think your life would be like? What would you be doing? Would you still be listening to Wu-Tang? Like, what would be going on?
I'd be listening to Wu-Tang. I probably wouldn't be into Limp Bizkit, but because of the age I was at that time, I was totally in a Limp Bizkit. I don't know. Like I you know what? I'm sorry, Fred Durst. I totally would have fucked with you, dog. Let me see. Oh man, I probably would have went to some of those events because I would have been an adult having a job. I probably would have saw Stone Cold more. I think I've only seen one event that Stone Cold was in, which I'm still grateful for. So yeah, like and plus back then they were having shows at Seagate Center, like house shows and stuff, which I mean, tickets at the Seagate Center in Toledo, I mean, like if you were an adult 39-year-old, with a job, full-time job, yeah, you could have done that. But then again, I wouldn't have been in Toledo probably at the time. So that's another thing. I probably would have, like, let's say I'm in Atlanta. If I was in Atlanta in the 90s as a 39-year-old, I totally would have went to a lot of WCW events because that stuff was based here in Atlanta. And they would air on TBS on Thursdays, and they would air on the TNT. That's where they have Nitro. TNT is based out of here. So all the Ted Turner stuff Yeah, and I probably would have ran into some of those guys because a lot of them lived here.
I like how people, if you're like 30 something and if you can go back to the 90s, I think most men are like, I would have went to wrestling events. A lot more is the most common answer.
I love it. See, and man, what I'm noticing is that's like our demographic for happening in the 90s. Like when we post wrestling stuff, oh my God, it does numbers. I post something from a movie, it does modest. Like a music video, it'll be modest. I post a promo, like a 30-second promo of like not even like a mid-card wrestler, not even a superstar. Man, just about every notification is on that.
People, when it comes to WWE and wrestling, I feel like 90s kids go so hard with that, just as hard as they do for Pogs, Beanie Babies. Like, it's that nostalgia. And I feel like for wrestling, I think is great for every generation, and they're going to always have their own little capsule of wrestlers. But there's something about that 90s wrestling that was beautiful and pure. And I don't know. And the early ones, wild as hell. I'll say that. But, you know.
Comical.
It was a lot of that would not pass today, but it was a time and place, and that's why the 90s is wonderful. So before we go, can you remind people where they can find you and all your shows online?
Over the Culture is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and just like happened in the 90s, they're available on all streams. But with Happen in the 90s, we're available on video as well. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram. We're on TikTok. And we just opened up our Redbubble store, Happened in the 90s. Get your t-shirts, get a shower curtain, get a mouse pad, a coffee mug. Man, we have it full throttle available on Redbubble. And soon we will have a Patreon for all of those episodes that got scrapped by Al Gore's internet. So yeah, with the Patreon account, you can get every episode, and then we'll have little packages for that. So that's in the works.
All right, a lot going on. Well, Steve, thank you for taking the time to talk to me about 1997, and everyone, you can find all that information below. And until next time, as always, keep crushing it.